The owners hope will reduce horse injuries.
These changes include a total ban of all medication on race day.
Reporter Alex Stone says despite the recent death, racing is still scheduled to resume Monday. A $500 billion lawsuit has been filed in the college admission scam. Jennifer K. Toy filed the lawsuit in San Francisco. In the filing, she writes, "I'm outraged and hurt because I feel that my son was denied access to a college because wealthy individuals felt it was okay to lie, cheat, steal, and bribe." A groundbreaking ceremony was held this morning for the new automated people mover at Los Angeles International Airport. This traveler feels it's needed.
There's so much congestion here. I mean, half the time you come to the airport, you don't know how long it's going to take. So I think that's great to ease some of the congestion.
Steve Clausen, California News.
When do you want to spot that burglar? When he's casing your home or after he's in? Ask John, whose Blink camera alerted him of burglars trying to break in while he and his family were home. Or Shannon, whose Blink camera caught a thief stealing packages. Both times, Blink video clips were sent to police to help convict the crooks. And in a moment, I'll tell you how to get 20% off all Blink Outdoor XT camera systems. Blink motion-activated indoor and outdoor cameras are wire-free, set up in minutes, and run on 2 lithium batteries that last up to 2 years. And Blink's live feed option lets you monitor your home and check in on kids and pets from anywhere from your Blink smartphone app. No contracts, no subscriptions, totally affordable. And right now, Blink Outdoor XT camera systems are an impressive 20% off. But hurry, the sale ends March 16th at midnight Eastern.
Visit blinkprotect.com/offer. 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 Blink is an Amazon company and it works with Alexa.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Police in New Zealand are dealing with an active shooter situation after shots were fired at a mosque in Christchurch. Police called it a serious and evolving situation and said there is still a high threat. There are reports that there are multiple victims in the shooting, but police have not confirmed those reports. Members of the House are demanding access to Special Counsel Robert Mueller's final report when it's finished.
The House overwhelmingly passed a resolution calling on the Department of Justice to release Mueller's findings to Congress and the public.
The yeas are 420, the nays are 0.
Texas Republican Will Hurd.
I want the whole truth to come to light in this matter.
Texas Democrat Lloyd Doggett slammed President Trump.
If it is a witch hunt, Mr. President, it has more witches than a Mar-a-Lago Halloween party.
The non-binding resolution was prompted by Attorney General Bill Barr's non-committal answers about Mueller's investigation during his Senate confirmation hearing. On Capitol Hill, I'm Terry Moore, NBC News Radio.
President Trump says he's looking forward to vetoing a bipartisan effort to block his declaration of a national emergency on the southern border. Trump thanked all the strong Republicans who voted to uphold his effort. Travel plans for thousands of people are on ice because of a major winter storm called Bomb Cyclone. The storm sweeping across the U.S. from the Rockies to the south has caused over 1,500 flight cancellations. The U.S. Treasury Secretary is promising his department will fight any attempt to get President Trump's tax returns. Stephen Mnuchin testified before the House Tax Committee and said he would follow the law.
I'm not aware of there's ever been a request for an elected official's tax return. But we will follow the law, and we will protect the president as we would protect any individual taxpayer.
Some House committees are seeking the returns as they investigate possible crimes, including Trump possibly lying about the value of his properties to pay lower taxes. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
Welcome to the Thom Hartmann Program. I'm live right here, Monday through Friday.
Are you ready for the #1 progressive talk show host in America?
71% of people say that the information they get from their friends and family, they take more seriously than the stuff they read in the media. Only 42% of Americans think the media is the most credible source of news. And therefore, if you're informed, if you're awake, you need to be telling your friends. You need to be talking to your friends and family.
24-time New York Times best-selling author and has nearly 6.5 million listeners nationwide.
These are crimes. These are international crimes against humanity, and I would love to see somebody held to account in this administration.
Introducing Thom Hartmann on KCAA Radio, weekday afternoons starting at 2.
KCAA.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reid. By the way, you can follow this show on both Facebook and Instagram. In fact, we're getting quite a number of people following on Instagram, and I hope you're enjoying the videos that I put out every once or twice a week to inspire you with some new ideas on making life work. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing of false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And brothers and sisters, Viewpoint with Father John is a listener-supported program. So if you are the ones who keep us on the air, thank you. If you would like to help support the show, please go to viewpointwithfatherjohn.com, go to the support button, and give what you can. Every gift helps, and every gift matters, and you matter. Also, I'd like to invite you to buy a copy of my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me. Some of you can see it on your screen right now. The premise of this book is that we're all God's children, and that we do not need more self-improvement. Rather, we need self-discovery. Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me is available on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and most online bookstores. So get your copy today. And it was a real experience today. We were swimming up to the studio. I sent Nick out to the parking lot to take a look. How's it, Nick? It's terrible. It's so bad he can't get his mic to work in there. But for those of you wondering what we're talking about, there's a water main break in our parking lot. And we've called the people we're supposed to call. Are you there, Nick? Yeah, he's trying. He's swimming. He has his water wings on. But we just can't get the water to stop, and it's coming up through the parking lot. Hopefully, when I get back out there, my car will still be on top of the pavement and not inside the pavement. So and if Nick's able to get rid of that water shortage, or shorten his line, he'll come on and give us a live report. Also, I want to give a shout out to my friends at Uppercuts Barber Shop. They're the ones who actually cut my hair, so if you don't like it, blame them. But actually, I like the job they do. So if you go there, say hi to Sam and Leo and the rest of the guys. It's a good old-fashioned barber shop where the guys can hang out and have a good time. Are you there with us now, Nick? Yeah. How's the water wings? Are they working okay?
They're working okay. One just blew up. I'm actually having a little trouble staying afloat.
That's why you don't eat chicken wings while you're using water wings.
Well, now I know.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Nick.
The water was good and you need help.
I'm sure we'll be getting our FCC notice at any moment. Okay. Now we had that fun. Tonight's a special night. Usually I have a guest, and tonight we're not doing that because I'm doing a special thing, the Hero's Journey, which is adapted from Joseph Campbell's work with mythology and also the hero's adventure, because life is supposed to be an adventure. We're not just supposed to show up and do a 9 to 5, go home, have dinner, go to bed, get up next day, do another 9 to 5. We're supposed to be discovering life. And that's not as easy as it sounds. And so tonight I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the hero's journey. And when I'm talking about the hero's journey, insert your name as the hero. Because part of the idea of this show is for you to become the hero you're waiting to show up. Because that hero is inside you. And there's heroes of all sorts. There are heroes who are police officers, doctors, firemen, nurses, school teachers, librarians, people who just give act of kindness, elders in our community, whether they're male or female. We have all kinds of heroes. Those who take a moment to help someone else's life come to fulfillment. That's what my spiritual directors have been in my life. They've been my hero. So on this journey, we start in the ordinary world where we just think life is just happening. Just go along to get along. that it shouldn't be exciting. We have a role, it's been predestined, which at another date we'll talk about that term and what it really meant in the Bible. It's not how it's used most of the time, but that's for another show. And so we just try to get along, get through. If you're in the United States, try to live the American dream, which is to do better than your parents did and hope your kids do better than you did. Hopefully people can go to school or get a trade. But to be able to retire someday, unless you're a priest, then that's how, who lives on love offerings, and then you try to win the lottery. So that's how it starts out. You're in your ordinary life, and you're just getting along. And then something happens. You get a call to adventure. What does that mean? That means something presents itself, a dream, an idea, that there might be something you are called to do. A dream that just sort of starts to gather in your subconscious and then in your foreconscious. And if you want to know a little more about those, go back to one of the shows when Dr. John Smith was here. He goes through that really well. He's a great psychotherapist. And so it starts almost like a grain of sand in an oyster, where it starts being an irritant. And you know there's something there. And then as this is happening, there's a part of you that goes to the refusal of the call. You're saying, that must be for somebody else. I'm just an ordinary person. It can't pertain to me because this doesn't happen to my family. Now, I went through that myself with the priesthood. I come from a family that is not religious in any way. In fact, my mother wasn't just an atheist, she is an anti-theist. And the difference between an atheist and an anti-theist is an atheist doesn't believe there's a God. An anti-theist doesn't believe you should believe in God either, and will go about finding ways to prove to you there's no God. So the idea of me going into the priesthood was, just a little bit worse than my chances of winning the lottery, with or without a ticket. So we refuse the call. We fight it. We see that in Jonah in the Old Testament, where he's called to go to Nineveh to carry God's message to these people, a message of redemption and hope. And he says, no way, not going to happen. Gets on the boat to go the opposite way. And you see all the stuff that happens through the story of Jonah, where he finally winds up in the belly of a fish. In America is where we call it a whale, but it's a fish in the original Hebrew and Aramaic. And he finally surrenders, and he gets regurgitated by the fish and decides to do God's will. Now, I hope you understand at this point that Jonah and the whale is an allegory. This didn't really happen. It's meant to tell us a story, and I know I'll get some letters from some literates, and while you do it, make out a check to the show. Help keep us on the air. Give you somebody to fight with. So while we're fighting all this stuff, a magical thing happens. We meet a mentor, somebody who helps spark the flame, kindle the fire, and it gives us a little glimpse, well, maybe I can do this. Maybe that dream really is meant for me. In my case, there was two people who were very instrumental in the beginning. One was Chuck Chamberlain, Richard Chamberlain's father, Richard Chamberlain, the actor, Dr. Kildare. But his father was a friend of mine when I was in my youth. God rest his soul. He and a Jesuit priest by the name of Father Tom Weston, both are very instrumental and helped me find my calling. I used to go to Manresa Retreat Facility up in, actually Azusa, but it's where the Monrovia nursery was. And they kindled a little flame inside me and made it possible that maybe this dream was for me. And the mentor is so important. That's somebody who is able to see something greater in yourself than you can see. And hopefully everybody meets somebody like that, somebody who loves you unconditionally, somebody who really sees you in a way that you can never see yourself. And they know that you're greater than your wildest dream. And so these two guys did that for me. And even when I was told that I would not be able to go to college because of my dyslexia, One of my spiritual directors, a guy by the name of Mike St. Clair, God rest his soul, when you go through this stuff young, you outlive everybody. And he used to say, nothing is impossible. If you're willing to pay the price, you can do it. And you can quit tomorrow, but you go today because they're worried about my dyslexia. And I would call him up and I say, Mike, it's too hard. I can't do it. I'm over my head in this. What was I thinking? He'd say, you can quit tomorrow, but you get there today. And he wouldn't let me quit. He's hard-nosed about it, you know, because he loved me more than I loved myself. And he can see better than I can see myself. So he was one of those mentors that I ran into. And so between those three people, Chuck Chamberlain, Father Tom Weston, and Mike St. Clair, I got pushed on the way. And in spite of all my fears, they convinced me if I went today and I took the idea I can quit tomorrow, I will get through this. Well, brothers and sisters, today I have a PhD. So obviously they were right about this. When there's many people saying, no, you can't do it, it's too hard. Dyslexics don't go through university. Well, I guess they were wrong. And I guess when we go into partnership with God, something happens. And God opens up doors that may not have been opened up before. But we have to be willing to face the fear. Now, any of you have read my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me, you know that I list 3 acronyms for fear. False evidence appearing real, forget everything and run, face everything and recover. And that face everything and recover, that's what our mentors do for us. They take us to the edge of the cliff, and then they let you know, you can stand here in fear, or you can learn to fly. And if it's a good mentor, they teach you how to fly. Now, I'm not saying go to a cliff literally and go jump off so you can fly. That's just a good LSD trip. But I'm not advocating that here. But you get the idea. And they used to say things to me like, it's okay to have butterflies. The trick is to teach them to fly in formation. And just little things like that. And around that time, I was reading a book from Richard Bach called Illusions. And there's a line in that book that says, you're never given a dream without also being given the means to make it come true. Well, I found that to be absolutely true. That doesn't mean there's not work involved. It doesn't mean that you don't have to do your part. In fact, I have a little prayer I say when I'm going into an emergency room on a crisis, and the little prayer goes like this: I'll pedal, you steer. In other words, I'll do the footwork, and I'll let God guide wherever we're going. Give me the right words so that we can be of service to other people. And a good mentor teaches us that sort of thing. Teaches us to pay less attention to our fear and more attention to our adventure. Because you're not given that adventure unless you, of course, have something to do. And remember, we're supposed to be in partnership with God. That's the whole idea. Jesus continuously pressed the idea that we're not here alone, that we're part of something bigger than ourselves. So being part of something bigger than ourselves, before I go into the next part of this our hero's journey, we're going to go into something bigger than the show, which is our commercial break, because if we don't have the commercial break, we won't have a show. So I'll be back with you in 2 and 2, and you are listening to Viewpoint with Father John.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org, www.4pfp, as in Personal Funeral Planning, www.jessieruiz.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Stardate, March 14th. A giant telescope is a marvel of science and engineering. Tons of glass and steel that are molded into an impressive scientific instrument. But it's also a marvel of civil engineering, years of work just to get the site ready for construction. Consider GMT, the Giant Magellan Telescope. When it's finished, it'll be the largest telescope in the world, with a main mirror almost as big as a basketball court. It's being built atop Cerro Las Campanas, an 8,200-foot mountain in Chile. The mountain isn't quite as tall as it once was, though. The first step of construction was to level the rounded peak. So teams blasted about 30 feet off the top of the mountain. They carted away about 50,000 cubic yards of rock. The crop job changed the way air flows over the mountain, which could affect viewing conditions for the telescope. So the GMT project spent several years monitoring the changes and simulating airflow with computer models. When that was done, they started excavating the base of the telescope dome. Piers have to be sunk deep into the bedrock to keep the telescope stable. Builders can't use explosives, though, because they might crack the rock. The digging takes months and will remove thousands more cubic yards of rock and dirt. After that, the construction team will be ready to start building the telescope and its dome, another major feat of engineering. We'll talk about another big telescope project tomorrow. You can follow Stardate on Facebook, Twitter, and on our website, stardate.org. For the McDonald Observatory, I'm Sandy Wood.
And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reid. And tonight I'm doing a special thing. Instead of having a guest, I'm having myself. I'm working on my next book called I'm Not Much, but I'm All I Think About. But and I'll be a guest on my own show when that comes out, too. All righty then. We're talking about the hero's journey. I've adapted this from Joseph Campbell's work. And just for the purpose of clarity, Joseph Campbell is one of my heroes. This is a man who truly came to see God in every religion and in every spiritual system. And I remember watching a interview with him and Bill Moyer. And he said to Mr. Moyer, he said, we read in the Bible, it says, it is a fool who says there is no God. He says there's another kind of fool. It's the one who says there is a God, but it's the one that I believe in. And if we're going to have a real hero's journey and adventure, we have to get out of tribalism. And we have to see that God is much bigger than any religion, much bigger than any denomination or way of thinking. Because if God could be contained within one school of thought, God would not be big enough to solve our problems. That was a problem. And I'll do a whole show on this one of these Thursday nights about how the idea of Judaism was the idea of God that had never been expressed before, that everything was really tribal, and you fought to protect your tribe. And here, through Abram at that time, God is saying, you're going to be a different people. You're going to be a tribe that blesses all other tribes. Never been heard before. So we'll get into that another night, but it's worth giving to you. So the next part of our journey is crossing the threshold. That's a big deal. What does that mean? It means we start taking some footwork to put the ball in play. And we dare to say, okay, I'm going to risk, and I'm going to see if this happens. Now, when we're crossing that threshold, We have to let go of some old ideas. I want you to think about this in your mind for a moment. Picture this. You're on a curb, and I'm able to say this about water because we have a whole parking lot full of water right now. If the water department's listening still, come fix it, please. The parking lot's sinking. But if you, little subtle message there. I sent him a little Morse code. So when we get to the point where we're just getting ready to, we're on the curb, we see the water coming in the gutter, but we want to get to the street. So we're going to have to jump if we don't want to land in the water. But we're hanging on to all these packages. So what happens when you jump and you hang on to all the packages? Both you and the packages wind up in the water, right? Because you can't make that leap. So now I want you to picture yourself on that curb again. This time when you jump, you let go of the packages. Now you make it to the other side, but before you make it to the other side, there's a little place you have to go through, and that place is called nowhere. And that sense of being nowhere is usually the crossing over the threshold, because you're letting go of what's familiar and what's comfortable, and you're making that first step. And when you jump, part of you knows you're going to make it. There's the other part that says, oh my goodness, I've jumped. What happens if I don't go far enough? What happens if I don't land if I think where I'm supposed to land? So now you have to trust the momentum. And as you trust the momentum, you move past where the water is, and you land safely in the street, hopefully. Unless you're wearing slippery shoes. Don't do that. But you land, and you find out you were able to go further than you thought. So then comes the next part of the journey, which is the test, allies, and enemies. Let me go into that a little bit. We always get tested, not because God doesn't know what we're going to do. We get tested so God could show us what we're able to do. And I think we really give God a bad rap when we think he's testing us because we're in trouble and taking a bad test. No, God's just trying to show us that we've come further than we realize. And that's God's way of showing that he believes in us more than we believe in him or her, whatever your concept of God is. But that this great spirit who created and runs the universe believes in us more than we believe in it. And that's why the tests come to let us know, hey, you're further than you think. We've got this together. Not you've got this. We've got this together. Okay? So then you find your allies. These are the people who believe in you, who are truthful with you. That part's very important. You know, like when you're wearing something that looks absolutely awful and you're about to go to a very important interview and everyone's telling you, oh, you look great, but you have the one that says, you know, you might want to try a different shirt. The one you're wearing might keep you from getting the job. You know, that's a true ally. They're not doing it to put you down. They're there to really help you because they want to see you get the best of everything. And the enemies. And we can have enemies that seem very friendly. They use that term, constructive criticism. I know that's a popular phrase, but you know, either it's constructive or it's criticism. It's not both. And if someone's giving you a lot of constructive criticism, I think really they're really pulling the rug out from underneath you. And there's people who are helpful, but there are people who have trouble seeing other people succeed. Sometimes they're not even aware of the fact that they have that problem. But they're so afraid of succeeding in their life that when someone around them starts succeeding, they got to pull them back because they're afraid if you do succeed, you will leave them. And like I said, they may not even be aware of the fact that they have this fear, but they're there. And then there's the people who are just kind of mean. That everything you say you're going to do, they say, you know, you're a fool. You're a fool for doing that. And sometimes they're in your very own family. I've seen that where you have members of the family that no matter what you try to do, they always find something wrong with it. Why it won't work. They're always the pessimists. And where some people see the glass is half full, they say that you just have a dirty glass, don't even try. So be aware of them. You don't have to put them down, but be aware of them. Because remember, you're into something much bigger than your past experience. You're going in for a new experience, a new hero's adventure. So that takes us to the next part, which is the innermost cave. Now, what's the innermost cave? That sounds scary, doesn't it? Sounds like it's a dark place, and it can be. I think of a cave is what St. John the Cross talked about, and also Sister Teresa Avila of the dark night of the soul. And that's where you go deep in yourself, and you face those fears, and you dare to risk everything, but you become at peace with yourself. You learn to complete the experience, to bless it and go on. That you're willing to see things through new eyes. That's the innermost cave where you really face all this stuff. Meditation is very good for that. I'm a big believer when you're starting an adventure of prayer and meditation. Don't go out on your own. Go out with God. You know, back to my prayer, I'll pedal, you steer. And then there's the ordeal. Now, the ordeal is kind of neat. Now, my ordeal was when I graduated, when I received my ordination. So the ordeal and the reward kind of go together. I got to see I can complete this thing that so many people told me were impossible. And I did have a few allies and a few enemies, and I had the tests along the way. I had some people who said, people like you can't go to college. Your dyslexia is too great. Some were well-meaning because that was all the information they had, but some people, because they just had trouble seeing people, they looked at it as a competition, that if I did well, it meant that I was doing better than they were. And that's their problem, not mine. I hope that they get in touch with that so that they too can have a better life. But I went through the ordeal. Did the do, as we said. You got to do the do, and walk the walk. And when I was graduating, one of the songs that got played was Impossible Dream, which I thought was apropos, because this seemed like an impossible dream for me. And then there's the reward. The reward was I got to practice what I'm doing. I got to be a priest. And it's quite an experience of getting to do this thing that I thought would be impossible, but just doing the footwork, and it came to be. And wherever you are in your life on that trail, know that there are those who believe in you. Know that God believes in you. And so this ordeal is meant to be a coming out of yourself process, making new discoveries. My friend Chuck Chamberlain used to say, life is a never-ending process of learning to uncover, discover, and discard. And as we do this, we get to that reward, which is getting to find someone we've never been introduced to before, which is ourselves. Our true selves, not the ego self, the true self, the self that was who we were before we had a face, as they say in Buddhism. And that part of you that is absolutely connected with God. There is no separation. And you get to do some of the neat things. I got the reward of the ordination papers, the diplomas, the stuff, some recognition in the field, in the vocation of priesthood, and that was nice too. But after you go through this, you then have to go to the road back. Now, if you remember in your gospel, where was the only place that Jesus had trouble creating miracles? His hometown. Because all they saw was the carpenter's son. They couldn't see Jesus, who Jesus truly was. Well, the road back can be like that. And there'll be people from our past who, what they remember is the 14-year-old that threw a rock through their window. And now let's say you're a doctor or a great scientist. And to everyone else sees you as great. But that person who knew you when you're 14, that you threw the rock through their window, that's who they see through all this. They don't see who you really are. So that road back can be difficult. And there's a dying phase. And after that dying, a resurrection. Now, what's that dying phase like? Mine was, I've been a priest a little while, and went through some tough times where I really had to question what I believed. I had to die to everything I believed before. And I had a very powerful experience in the resurrection part of that. And what that was I was concelebrating a mass in my bishop's private chapel. There was only room for like 10 people. There's just a few people there. And when you're concelebrating the Mass, that means you're also doing the Mass with the person celebrating, for those of you with non-liturgical background. So I'm supposed to be helping to do the readings, helping to do the Eucharistic prayers. That's our communion. Well, before communion is what's called the homily. It's the sermon. And if you ever heard a bishop talk, what comes after the bishop? Tuesday. Because bishops can preach for a long time. So as this particular bishop was preaching, and he's a good orator, so I always say that with fun with him. He's a great with homiletics. But I in his chapel he had a painted picture of Jesus holding a little baby in the palm of his hand, a little embryo. And this artist captured the love of Jesus' eyes focused on this little baby life. And I got caught up in it. Until finally, not only was I part of the painting and a part of me, but it was one of those divine moments. And I had the very deep and prophetic experience where I knew that I was not called into the priesthood out of virtue. Rather, God said, I can use you to love my people. It's an experience that can't be put into words. It was so prophetic, this part of dying and resurrection that we're talking about with Joseph Campbell. It was so prophetic, I couldn't even go up and finish helping with the Mass. I couldn't even go up for communion. All I could do is sit there and weep because I was speechless. How do you know somebody had an experience with God? They have nothing to say. And the bishop had to bring communion back to me, and he could just see that something prophetic had taken place, something beyond the five senses into the sixth, what we call the metaphysical sense. And so he finished the Mass on his own. He left me down there in the chapel for about an hour, hour and a half by myself, and then he came down to check on me, and I very feebly tried to explain to him what had taken place. And he looked at me, and his eyes filled up with tears. He said, you had the Christ experience. You've now gone from being ordained to being a priest. And he held me, both bawled like a couple of babies. In that moment, I had died to self and was resurrected into the priesthood. And whatever it is that your adventure is, you'll have that moment where you die to self and you resurrect as this new person. Now, that's not going to be the only time you go through that. It's going to happen over and over again because all of life is death and resurrection, death and resurrection, death and resurrection. And that's throughout the gospel. And I'm not going to go into all of them tonight, but there's several of them where Jesus talks about unless the wheat falls off the shaft and goes into the ground and dies, it can't grow to be more wheat. And so all of our life is continuously doing this. So that was my resurrection at that time. And I had a whole new approach to priesthood because I knew at that moment I had no right to look down on anybody. All my life I had been a street rat. I'd been on my own since I was 14 years old. Knew what it was like to be homeless and sleep on my high school campus because I had no way of caring for myself financially. And here I am, a priest. But no longer a priest of my own doing, but of something deeper. That's the resurrection, is that we die to self. Joel S. Goldsmith talks about in his book, The Thunder of Silence, in order for the new man to live, the old man must die. And that's what happened in that moment. And so we're at the resurrection stage. We're going to go to commercial when we come back. We're going to talk about what happens after the resurrection. And so you're tuned into Viewpoint with Father John, and we'll see you in 2 and 2.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, K292 FQ Riverside, and K293 CF Moreno Valley.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
If you're looking for a full or part-time sales position and you have radio, TV, or print media experience, KCAA has a great opportunity waiting for you that pays the highest commissions in the market. KCAA is the only station in the IE that broadcasts on 3 frequencies, so advertisers receive 3 ads for 1 low rate. This makes KCAA a must-buy for every local business. If you're interested in a sales position with us, email ceo@kcaaradio.com.
Here's your community calendar for KCAA. Phantom of the Opera is now taking the stage at the Lifehouse Theater in Redlands from February 9th to March 17th. You can witness young Christine's rise to fame in the opera world thanks to the schemes of the ominous Phantom. But will his efforts win her heart? Sinister plots abound amidst comedic moments and heartbreaking mystery. The Lifehouse Theater is located at 1135 North Church Street in Redlands. You can find tickets and more information at boxoffice.lifehousetheater.com. And that's a look at your community calendar for KCAA.
And welcome back, brothers and sisters. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reid. Just a couple reminders. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram under Viewpoint with Father John. Also, to remind you that this is a listener-supported program, and so you are the ones who keep us on the air. So if you like what you're hearing, please go to viewpointwithfatherjohn.com. Click on the support button and give what you can. I truly do thank you. And also I want to invite you to buy your copy of my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me. It's a wonderful way of helping you find your own path to God, whatever that path is. And it's available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and most online bookstores. And I do appreciate your buying the book because it does help support this show. Also, I want to give a shout out to my friends, Dr. Ho, Nikki Ho and her husband. They own Claremont Pharmacy in Claremont, California, on the corner of Indian Hill and Arrow Highway. If you need a good pharmacist that is really on top of the job, you want to go see my friend Nikki. She is the best of the best. And her husband is just as wonderful, and he's getting ready to open up another pharmacy. And when he does, I'll give you the insight to that, where to go for that, because he is also a fabulous pharmacist. But I'll tell you what, with my diabetic stuff, Nikki is always on top of it and makes sure that I have the best possible care. You'd be hard-pressed to find a group of people more loving, caring, and who are really focused on your better health. So, Nikki, thank you for everything you do for me. And for everybody that I love as well. You have impressed some of my friends recently went and saw you. So when we left, we were on the resurrection. So we've died to self. We arose a new person. And then we get to the return with the elixir. What does that mean? The return with the elixir. The elixir is the solutions we find along the way. The thing that shows us we can do this, and we can show other people that they can do it too. Earlier, I related to Richard Bach's book, Illusions. And in that same book, there was another thing, another little caption said, learning is finding out what you already know. Doing is showing that you know it. Teaching is reminding others that they know it as well. So that elixir is showing others that they know it as well. You don't go through this process without being in touch with somebody else who's at the beginning stages, who just got the call to adventure, who just is battling with themselves whether to go for it, not go for it. They're at that part where they don't know if they were given the dream for nothing or if there's something behind it. And now it's your turn to be the mentor, your turn to be the person who loves unconditionally. And then we start all over again, because we don't have just one adventure. We have adventure after adventure. Odious, when he found his paddle, he went back, he took it back home, showed the answer after he'd gone through everything he'd gone through, and started on a new adventure. He didn't stay home very long, probably because his wife wanted him to take out the trash at that time. And we all know when she starts playing with a trash can, you know you got to take it out. I'm just kidding. So, in order to keep this great experience of the hero's journey, now it's your job to inspire others. Because you can't keep it unless you give it away. The 12-step people know that. It's it's like my friend Chuck Chamberlain used to say, that love is the divine paradox. When you go out to get, you come back empty. When you go out to give, you come back overflowing. And it's the same with this hero's journey, this hero's adventure. And the whole idea of the adventure, it's not just to get neat prizes along the way. The idea of the hero's journey is that each time we go on the new journey, we come closer to our relationship with God. And it's a relationship that should constantly be changing. I used to tell my parishioners when I was at St. Michael's Parish in Arcadia, I tell them, if next year I'm saying the same things to you that I'm saying to you today, you need a new priest. I haven't grown any. And the idea, it's a never-ending road of growth. Because God's will for us is for us to get closer and closer and closer, for the ego to get thinner and thinner and thinner, because ego as an acronym stands for edging God out, and to get to the place where we can see God everywhere we look. Because if you can't see God everywhere, you can't see God anywhere. If you only think that you see God in people who share your religion, that's not God you're seeing, it's ego. But when you can look out and see God in the eyes of the Buddhist, in the eyes of the Hindu, in the eyes of the Muslim, in the eyes of the Christian, in the eyes of the Jewish population, in the eyes of the atheist, now you're seeing God. And that's what this Hero's Adventures set out for you to do. And you have to start from wherever you are. Where you are at the moment is not bad. It's where you're supposed to be at the moment. But if you just stay there, you're going to miss the whole idea of life. You know, many of you who know me personally, you know I do a lot of funerals. And dying does not scare me. I have no fear of death. And I've been in some bad motorcycle accidents. Yes, I used to ride a motorcycle. And I was in one where they had to bring me back because it was too bad of an accident. And my fear is not dying. My fear is dying without living first. And when I get the funeral of somebody who all they did was work. Now, working's noble, don't get me wrong. But they never discovered life. Those are the ones I really mourn over. Because they were in the midst of paradise and never knew it. They never knew it. It reminds me of a story that comes out of the Buddhist faith about this novice, this monk. And he's been studying with his peers, his brother novices. And they're about to graduate to become priests, Buddhist priests. And everyone had received enlightenment but him. And so after they had their celebratory dinner and they all went to their little huts, their little cells, as we call it, in the monastery, he was beside himself. Why has everyone reached enlightenment but me? And so in distress, he walks down in the dark to where they had a pond, a little lake, if you will, on the compound. And he sat down on a log, and he was looking at the reflection of the moon on top of the water. Is smooth, very quiet. And when he moved his foot, he kicked something. And he reached down, and he found he had what he thought was a bag of pebbles. So he took the first pebble out, he threw it to the center of the pond, and went in, bloop, and he watched the ripples. It was somewhat soothing watching the ripples in the moonlight. So he took the next one, threw it to the middle of the pond, bloop, watched the ripples. He did this all night. Well, the next morning, his brothers were concerned. They knew how distraught he had been, so they went to find him at his cell, and when they went in, they found his bed had not been slept in. So they grew greatly concerned, and so they went in search of him. And finally, they found him by the pond, just weeping. And they said, "Our brother, what is it?" He said, "Last night in my despair, I came here to our little pond, to our little lake. And in the night, I kicked what I thought was a bag of rocks or pebbles, and I started throwing them into the pond because the noise was comforting and watching the ripples was soothing. But in the light of day, I found they weren't pebbles at all, and they were diamonds. And this is my last." And that's where we are. We're in the darkness of this, and what we think is a bag of pebbles or rocks or bad luck just might be that bag full of priceless diamonds. But we can't see it yet because we're so consumed in the darkness that we think that this is all there is. And so we take them out one by one. And in the light of day, we find out these are really diamonds. And I look back over my life, and I'm sure some of you have done this as well, in places where I thought, this is the worst thing that could ever happen to me. And the new light turned out to be one of the greatest things that ever happened to me because it afforded me to do what I'm doing now. And that's what we're doing on a hero's journey, on a hero's adventure. We start with the ordinary world. We go to the call to adventure. We go to the refusing the call. We go to meeting our mentor. We go to the crossing the threshold, the test, allies, and enemies. We go to the inner cave, to the ordeal, to the reward, to the road back, to the resurrection, to the return with the elixir. And it's an exciting thing, but when you're in the middle of it, it could be really scary. And like I said earlier, when you make that jump from the curb to the street, you're going to have to spend a little time in nowhere, and that's uncomfortable. But brothers and sisters, crisis time is awakening time because it causes us to find new answers to old situations. It tells us that we can't stay where we are. We have to do something. And oftentimes we'll try to go back to where we were, but have you ever tried to put on a shirt you wore when you were in junior high, when you're 40 years old? How well does that work for you? It doesn't fit. It's too tight. It's not meant to fit. You hopefully have grown since then. And so it is with your life. You can't go back to where you were. And I see people go back to painful situations because although it's painful, it's familiar. But then they find they can't stay there for long because it's so uncomfortable. It's just like trying to wear that shirt from junior high that is just not meant to fit. And so either we go into deep depression and refuse to accept that the shirt doesn't fit anymore, or we head out to see where the adventure is taking us. And we take that great adventure, that great journey, and we become willing to experience more than we are today. And it's fabulous. And you can't put words to it. And it's like me trying to explain to you the flavor of vanilla ice cream. I could tell you the temperature, I could tell you the ingredients, but until you taste it, you really don't know what vanilla ice cream is. And it's the same with this adventure. Until you let go and do something that's beyond yourself, then you're not going to know the euphoric feeling of it. And sometimes it's not euphoric till later. But you get that great sense. As you look back, you see, wow, how did that happen? And where did the time go? It's incredible. And I look at the time since that experience I related to you when I discovered that I was called in the priesthood, not out of virtue, but with God saying, I believe I can do good through you. I can use you to love my people. And since then, I've gone through that experience in new ways, different ways. You know, a few years ago, I went through the experience of losing everything. everything. I mean, it was the ordeal all over again. And going into the inner cave, and Gabby walked through it with me, and through the great despair and the crisis time being awakening time. And I got to the point where I let go. And when I let go, it was amazing what happened. Within just a few hours, we had a new place to live. Everything in my work world changed. Everything in Gabby's work world changed because we let go. And so I want to use that as a segue to share with you a story from Richard Bach from that book I've been referring to tonight, Illusions. At the very beginning, he has handwritten notes. And it's this Messiah who works as a mechanic, and he goes to tell these people this story. And the story goes something like this. Down at the bottom of the stream are these creatures that their whole existence is hanging on to roots and branches as they make their way downstream. And their whole life consists of the clinging to the things on the bottom of this stream. Well, one of the creatures decided that the stream must know where it's going. It's bigger than I am, and I'm going to trust that it knows where it's going. So he says to his friends, I'm going to let go and let the stream carry me where it will. And he said, fool, here's some of the test allies and enemies. They said, fool, if you let go, you surely die quicker than boredom by the way it crashes, smashes you against the side of the creek and everything. Don't let go. He said, I'd rather die that way than die of boredom. So he let go. And at first, he was smashed against the sides of the stream and of the creek. But he refused to cling to anything. This is his going into his innermost cave and into the ordeal. And sure enough, after a while, the stream carried him up. And he was now free of all that. And it's taken him downstream. And as he gets further downstream, there's a group of creatures like himself. And they say, look, it's one like us. But he flies. And he says, these things I'm doing, you can do too. You just have to let go. And within a few moments, he's out of their view. And they spent years telling stories of the Messiah that came by and told him who flew and said that we could do what he did as they continue to struggle to just cling to the bottom of the creek. Well, we've had that great Messiah go by and tell us these things that he has done, we can do and far greater. We have been invited to the hero's journey. We have been invited to partake in this great adventure. But to do that, you're going to have to do something very daring. You're going to have to let go. You're going to have to believe that you really are in partnership with God and that God is benevolent and wants good for you and is not an angry God, but a God of love and of care and of everything that could be good. So I hope you've been enjoying our time together on this as we discovered the hero's journey. I hope you found some things that you could take with you. I want to give a few thanks. I want to thank Nick, who is the best in the business as an engineer. Thanks for everything you do, Nick, and thank you for wading out into that water and helping us get a live report as our building is sinking. And I want to thank Gabby for getting me here. Gabby is so dedicated to the show. She works all day, and then she goes through an hour and a half of traffic to get home so we can go through another hour to get here. And I'm the luckiest man in the world to have her. Next week, we're going to have a really interesting show. I have Eric Perry, who's coming, who's from Haunting in New England, and we're going to talk about some of the things that are on the other side of what we see. But to you, my listeners, thank you for tuning in tonight. If no one's told you that they love you, let me be the first. Thank you for spending another hour with Viewpoint with Father John. God bless.
KCAA Loma Linda. Listen on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM. Are you determined to lose a few inches around the belly area, but you can't seem to get it done regardless of how much you exercise? Now there is a safe and easy way to use a topical gel called TC1 Gel that can help. It's a thermogenic gel that you rub on your waist 15 minutes before exercising. Then simply put on the TC1 sweat belt and start your workout. You'll sweat like crazy and feel the fat burning away. TC1 Gel boosts circulation, increases perspiration, and activates body heat to burn off more calories. Go to tc1gel.com and use the code RADIO30 for a 30% discount on this amazing product. Again, that's tc1gel.com. Follow on Instagram at TC1Gel. Like we said, just rub it on your waist 15 minutes before exercise, then put on the TC1 sweat belt and start your workout. That's tc1gel.com. That's TC followed by the numeral 1, gel.com. For several years, KCAA has been marketing the Youngevity brand of nutritional and personal care products. Our experience with Youngevity has been 100% positive, so we are pleased to recommend them to you. Regarding nutritional supplements, we recommend Pollen Burst in the berry flavor and Tangy Tangerine 2.0 in